Okay, thank you everybody for choosing to listen or view a Global from Asia podcast. We have an amazing guest and actually an amazing topic that is very timely. Francois Jaffres from Novaland. Thanks so much for joining.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. It truly is an amazing topic. It's something that everyone has to listen to. So thank you for having me.
I'm sure. We were chatting, we're preparing for the interview, and I think so we're going to be talking about preparing for Q4, especially in, I do hope these shows are evergreen, so I don't want it to be so much just about COVID, but I do think, this will be the biggest. I think you also seem to agree that it's probably going to be one of the biggest e-commerce Q4s ever. So there's a lot people should be preparing for.
Right.
And a little bit of background about you. You're the Director of Business Development at Novaland, and you've done industrial engineering at West Virginia University, and also spent time with Coca-Cola before joining in 2016. And you're in Atlanta now, and you also go to Pittsburgh, and you share, like we've been preparing for this show, you really share a lot with on podcasts and speaking. So I really, really appreciate you to share with us today.
Yeah. No, you hit the nail on the head with all that. So I appreciate you having me again.
So you deal a lot with logistics, and I'm curious, maybe before we talk about Q4, let's maybe just kind of recap the insanity of logistics and e-commerce. Obviously that could be a whole show in itself too, but maybe just a little bit of what you've been going through the last couple of quarters.
Yeah, particularly I would say the past quarter, specifically.
Sure.
Obviously through Q1 and Q2, there was a lot of turmoil with COVID, and you see that in a lot of financial reports where you see obviously the cross-border trade and international commerce just sort of plummeting. And I think Jungle Scott had a little white page on it, which I found interesting. But this really is something that is so unprecedented in logistics, where we are seeing prices twice as high as we did last year, the same time last year, where, we might see $1,700-$1,800 for a container going to the West Coast. And now we're seeing those at like $3,700-$3,800. So it's absolutely insane. It's something that's not talked about very frequently. And I think it's something that even when it is talked about, the blame tends to be shifted or sort of put on freight forwarders, which I think is unfair. I think is very unfair. And I think it is ignorance is the wrong word. I think it's a lack of the available education out there, where a freight forwarder, all they are is someone that coordinates between shipping carriers and the shippers, right? And they essentially just handle all those communications and paperwork. And so where a lot of our users and just Amazon sellers in general specifically, they're seeing these price spikes from freight forwarders, but it's because of freight forwarders seeing these price spikes from the shipping carriers.
Yeah.
Right. And that's all done through general rate increases, GRIs, which is another topic, which can be an entire topic in and of itself.
Sure. I know. There's so much there's so much to share. So, I think that's a quick, we'll focus on the future, preparing people for the next couple quarters. But yeah, I think it's been I do agree with you, people, I think even without COVID, people always kind of blame the logistics. It is an easy scapegoat, where's my stuff? It's stuck in customs. The prices are so high, the oil prices, the labor costs, the I feel like the logistics always has to be the delivery of the bad news. Usually it's, logistics is such a, messy. I think, you're trying to control all of these moving parts, right? And especially nowadays, there's even more moving parts, and you have to kind of make sure it all is delivered, communicated to the client, this, Amazon seller or whoever. And then you're the one delivering this news, and they're like yelling at, you're the messenger almost, you know what I mean? As a logistic. Right. So it is a tricky time. And yeah, like you said, prices are going up, and Q4 especially, prices, we're recording this mid-September, and the show will go online pretty quickly also in September. So, what are you noticing already happening? People, people have to prepare now earlier. People are getting scared Amazon will close warehouses or restrict inbound shipments or, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know what
Well,
what are
it's
you seeing coming or what?
sort of that fluster is exactly what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I mean, no.
Sort of translate into shipping. It goes all the way down to the 3PL warehouses, right? And something that wasn't necessarily talked about heavily just a few months ago because everyone relied on Amazon FBA and having inventory in there, and then sort of just being hands off. Where there's a lot of freight forwarders that were very familiar with Amazon FBA, obviously. They knew how to ship there, they could drop off their cargo. But now we're seeing, Amazon throttle these quantities, and they really have to focus on where can I store my inventory? How am I going to stay, in stock, especially during the holiday season, which is going to be crazy.
Yeah.
And so to that point, going with 3PL and then coordinating with the logistics and then seeing the carriers reduce those quantities of containers even that are able to go onto the vessels. And now we're seeing something that is also crazy. And the articles just started coming out a few days ago. I think everyone should start Googling this. But the Chinese Ministry of Transport, and you might be familiar with this, they just stepped in where typically a government won't step in and say, hey, this is getting ridiculous. We need to keep the prices, fair. You need to open up more capacity on this trans-Pacific route. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. But with Amazon doing this, I think it is opening a door to other marketplaces. Mm-hmm. And that dependency on 3PL particularly is going to increase. So now you see a ton of freight forwarders trying to skirmish to find 3PL locations where they can actually deliver the goods because now their truck yards are starting to get filled up.
Yeah.
And one thing that's very much not discussed is that when a 3PL says no to a freight forwarder, to a trucking company, that trucking company is going to charge the freight forwarder and the freight forwarder is going to charge you. So if you don't have a good 3PL that you can ship all that to, you're going to see those last minute charges. And where that typically occurs is when you're using cheap or very low end, or some might call it affordable or economic solutions to freight forwarding. It's not an industry where you just find someone that's super cheap and they're going to be the best ever because they're cheap. You're getting what you pay for. If you work with a cheap freight forwarder, they're going to work with cheap trucking companies. You work with cheap trucking companies, they're not going to communicate with your 3PL. You're not going to have inventory there on time. And then you see those charges later on.
Yeah.
That's also where you see a lot of rolled cargo, obviously.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for these insights. So I think we're making a little bit of assumptions. So I just want to make sure everybody understands, the idea of Amazon, especially in March was like a nightmare. Everybody was it was really scary. And then they stopped accepting non-priority items into their warehouse. And a lot of sellers, myself included, a lot of our products were not in that list. So what does that mean? We have stuff in China or factories or ports or inbound. Well, if it was already inbound, but if you didn't put the shipping plan. So now I think what's happening is a lot of people are looking at third-party warehouses because a lot of people just send directly into Amazon. But now I think that's always a strategy, especially for fourth quarter, to have stuff in a third-party warehouse already in the U.S. or maybe at least a way to get it fast to at least your market. Let's not say U.S., but whatever market. But I think now more than ever, people need these third-party warehouses because if you send everything to Amazon, you don't know how long it will take for them to receive it. You don't know, how if there's problems or delays or there's now restrictions on how much you can send. They're kind of like new sellers can't send as much in, and they're trying to forecast. They don't want to have too much in their warehouse, and then they really kill you in fourth quarter because they jack up the rates. They really increase their cost
3 times, I think.
Yeah, like 3x. So some sellers don't even think or look. There was even a joke I saw on a Facebook group, like Jeff Bezos laughing, and he's like, he's got the calculator upside down and the number is just some random number. He's like, oh, I think we made a mistake calculating your FBA fees. Like people don't realize they just trust whatever the rate, they just pay it, so there's definitely these reasons to use, other services or have other services in place so that you could kind of buffer that risk by having stuff in these third-party warehouses or having stuff on standby, especially with cost and these restrictions on receiving items directly on Amazon. Do you think I summarized? Is there more you'd like to say about that, or?
No, I think you really hit the nail on the head there. And not only we talk a lot about Amazon, but there's also these other marketplaces that are opening up.
Yeah.
And so third-party sellers are really seeing these opportunities that they really didn't see even a year ago.
Yeah.
Where I know you had Steve Selikoff
Yes.
on not too long ago, and he was talking about Amazon and how Amazon wasn't going to slip up again against Walmart. Well, now we have Walmart Plus, right?
Yeah,
And
I saw
now
that on
we're
Prime. Yeah.
yeah, and now we're, let's say 15 years ago, everyone loved to go into the store and start shopping. That's just what they do. Yeah, it's he also talked about retail therapy. It's a huge thing. My girlfriend does it all the time. But now you're moving on to platforms like Amazon, and you're growing dependency on this e-commerce model where I buy everything on Amazon. But now there's a new competitor, Walmart Plus, and they're charging, I think, half the price, or yeah, it's about half the price of what Amazon Prime is charging, and who knows what else they have to offer.
Yeah.
I know they're getting more competitive with 1-day shipping and 2-day shipping, but a big part of that is also growing dependency on 3PL warehouses.
Yes.
So you might be selling on Walmart, Amazon might throttle your inventory. Now you have to go through FBM instead of FBA. So that itself just creates a dependency on 3PL. And then when you factor in Target trying to get into third-party sellers and all these other platforms, Touch a Modern, if you can get on Wayfair, Home Depot, Lowe's, any of these other marketplaces, it really grows more and more of a dependency. And I think this is really going to be the rise of 3PL.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to be trying to get into this market soon.
Agreed. Yeah. So just to also, I kind of sometimes simplify or just rehash that, but basically, yeah. I mean, I started, a lot of early sellers were eBay sellers. I think I had a website. I got in about 2003, and I was doing eBay and website. Amazon, I knew about Amazon, but definitely, I think they opened it up 2006 or so. But I think Steve was one of the earlier ones. I was also messing around with it too then, and it was never a big significant channel. But now there's so many pure 100% FBA sellers only. Like just sending everything directly to Amazon from their, say, China factory or wherever. But now, like, I think what the trend you're seeing, and we're all seeing, more and more people are talking about Walmart in these groups I'm hearing, and in the community, and there's just more and more opportunity now. But it's also a better business model for the seller. I mean, we want more competition. We don't want to just have this huge gorilla of Amazon that's just crushing sellers. And if by having diversification, you're a stronger business model. It's a better. It's obviously more difficult, but that means it's also more difficult for everybody, and there's more opportunity if you can do it the right way. So
right, and from that, I mean, competition itself really drives innovation, and I think that's what we need, particularly now when you do see these sellers just being a single market seller and having all these eggs in one basket. They don't really see that risk associated with it because everyone's talking about how easy it is, and we're seeing numbers like over 3,000 new sellers a day. So it's you really have to diversify that. Otherwise, it's just going to keep growing, and eventually you're going to grow dependency. And if that fails, then everyone's going to fail.
Yep. Agreed. So I think I forgot who canceled Black Friday, but some of these retail stores are even canceling, or I don't know if it's because of COVID or because of whatever, or whatever, but I guess Cyber Monday is going to be really taking over. I think we're all bracing for impact, and then the biggest, I think the hardest thing about e-commerce for me, at least, is forecasting your sales, forecasting your inventory, especially fourth quarter, especially now, because we're all assuming it's going to be a humongous fourth quarter. So I guess one is obviously, I think Cyber Monday, or maybe it'll just be normal Black Friday, but it'll be online. But what's your crystal ball seeing? I guess there's just going to be a massive spike, right? I mean, across every channel. Walmart probably up, Walmart Plus program, Amazon, everywhere. Everything online.
Well, we've already been seeing order sizes increase from a lot of our users, and that's from all the way from new sellers to established sellers. And one big thing is that they are trying to get on these different platforms. So we might have seen sellers purchase $5,000-$6,000 worth of inventory. Now they're placing $20,000 orders, and instead of shipping to FBA, they're shipping to a 3PL.
Yeah.
And so you can see everyone getting ready for this, and it's going to be one of those things where if you're not in it, you're not going to win.
Yeah.
If you don't have inventory, particularly, and you don't have enough inventory to last you through those holidays, you're not going to win. I think what a lot of sellers could do is actually capitalize on this moment. And particularly if they're newer sellers, they wait until these businesses or these other brands or their competitors run out of inventory, boost all their ads, get on things like, Amazon Live, get on Amazon Posts, utilize all these different new marketing tactics that these other businesses won't be doing because they have no inventory.
Yeah.
So again, this competition is really going to breed more innovation. So looking into the crystal ball, I think it's going to be one of the craziest Q4s that we've ever seen for e-commerce.
Yeah.
And I think we've already been seeing that with just with COVID alone. So
yeah,
I think 2020 is going to be a huge e-commerce year.
So let's let you kind of, let's just dig in a little bit more of the tactic you're seeing. So 100% from, like, say, I guess the typical still is Chinese factory, trade war or not, COVID or not, Chinese factory to like West Coast. Usually, I guess you still think West Coast, LA, LAX. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong or give me some insights of where you think people are
or
saying.
Long Beach or
Long Beach, and then into a warehouse, a third-party warehouse, 3PL, third-party logistics, and then into the Amazon. But are they prepping it in China? Are they prepping, are they labeling it? Maybe give us some strategies. I guess now if you're not you would do your shipping plan from the US now and then send it into Amazon, some of it, and then keep some of it maybe at this third-party warehouse that can also be ready for Walmart, can be ready for, website sales, Shopify or shopping cart, keeping it there. And then, like you said, a new seller could just be waiting and hoping that his competitors get out of stock, and then he can pump in a whole bunch more into Amazon from the third-party warehouse, say in November. He got lucky. He sees his competitors run out of stock. He starts sending in. He has hundreds in a third-party warehouse, so he saves the money on the fourth quarter shipping fees. Storage fees of Amazon, and then he's sending them in really quick, and he's hitting it hard to try to just maximize that. And then, like you said, he's going into Amazon Live, Amazon, content posts or PPC to really try to maximize that. But I think maybe give us some like tactics or strategies, sending it all into a third-party warehouse and then splitting that and sending some into Amazon.
Yeah, so a lot of the FBA prep, particularly for all the Nebulae users, they have everything prepped in China, whether it's at a consolidation warehouse or having labels put on at the factory itself. As you know, factories will almost never charge for putting labels on because it's such an easy task for them. And so they'll have all the FNSKU labels still put on. They'll have the master carton labels still be labeled, but they might not have it palletized to be FBA compliant. So they might be able to maximize actually more of the use of that pallet in a container. And when you're doing that, obviously your cost per unit is going to go down. What we see a lot of them doing now is just looking for alternatives to Amazon FBA, whether that is on the West Coast or on the East Coast. Now, one important conversation that we have with a lot of them is don't think that shipping to the West Coast 3PL is going to be your cheapest solution because in the short term, when you're looking at the vessel itself going to the West Coast, maybe it is a little bit cheaper. But then when you see the shipping costs associated with that 3PL to go to Atlanta or to go to Pittsburgh or to be shipped to Massachusetts, that's where you're really eating up a lot of costs. So we see them diversifying really where they're leaving that supply, both on the West Coast and on the East Coast. So they might have it, fast track to the West Coast, and they'll have half their inventory cross-dock to an East Coast location, and then they'll just ship out from there. And whichever location obviously makes sense for whoever the end buyer is, that's where they'll ship out from. Now, that's what a lot of the conversations that we have tend to be, is just, hey, how competitive are your shipping costs? Not necessarily how competitive are your inventory storage costs or your handling costs. It really comes down to the shipping from the 3PLs.
Okay. And just to clarify, maybe just to dig in a little bit more, sea shipments, air, I mean, I guess depends on obviously how heavy the products are, but probably still do two ocean shipments, one to like the West Coast, one to the East Coast, like you're in Atlanta, and then distribute. I guess also depends on how heavy or bulky your products are, and also how much
Right.
volume you're sending totally, right? If you're a new seller, it's still not gonna. You don't want to split shipments on smaller items. But
Yeah.
if you're a bigger
I mean,
seller,
if you're paying the flat fees on both of them, there's no point. I mean, a lot of new sellers, they might be doing 1 to 2 cubic meters, which really isn't that much. That's about a pallet, maybe a pallet and a half. You don't want to split that up onto two different vessels. You're paying those flat fees of what, $700-800 each.
yeah,
It probably makes more sense just to ship to the West Coast or just to the East Coast, and then ship the rest of it via rail, or actually rail is just going to be the cheapest option.
yeah,
Now, of course, express air, its own beast. Those prices were ridiculous, particularly
that's
because of
crazy.
COVID.
Yeah,
Yeah, when they had to ground a lot of those
there was no
the
flights. Yeah, no
747s.
commercial flights.
Exactly. What now? Interestingly enough, I'm not sure if you saw too much of this, but containers, 40-foot high cube containers, that is a resource that the industry is lacking, because China isn't receiving enough imports, and they're just exporting like crazy. And so I think what everyone needs to know is that they should be working with their freight forwarders to see what equipment is available. And if they make these suggestions to use a different type of 40-foot container, it's for a reason. It could be to get it there faster. It could be because it's cheaper. Obviously, if it's short in supply, it's going to be high in demand. Price is going to go up.
Yeah, yeah, it makes sense. So there's I guess I'm just wondering if we can give any forecast like double. I mean, people are wondering, do I double what I ordered last year? I mean, I don't know if you have some kind of insights from what you maybe some of your users are doing, but I mean, it's always it's a risk. I mean, that's the game of especially retail. I think people are just going to have to gamble, because it's kind of it's gamble. It's business is a risk, right? But you will try to calculate the risk and try to forecast how much more. But it's the game, right? You don't want to run out of stock, but you also don't want to like overstock. So I don't know if you would have either something you're seeing or any insights
Well,
there.
I think that's a very interesting point that you brought up, that it is a risk. But with every risk, you can manage it however you like. So a big trend with sellers, and particularly with gurus, they say how easy it is, right? How easy it is to source from Alibaba, or how easy it is
Yeah,
to sell on Amazon.
yeah,
It's not. I mean, you get what you put in. And so if you're willing to constantly check up on your competitors, see what sort of keywords you can really optimize in your listing, see what they're doing wrong, and look at their one-star reviews and improve your product. And at the same time, having the inventory to fulfill that, and having the right partners, whether it's 3PL or logistics or just general supply chain, uh, it's all about the work that you put in, and that's what you're going to take out.
yeah,
Now, if you do absolutely nothing different than what you did 2 quarters ago for Q4, you're not going to succeed. I mean, that's just, I don't have to tell you, that's the reality of it.
yeah,
You have to put in so much more work in a Q4, and it's so much more planning. But I can't emphasize enough that it is what you make of it.
yeah.
If you make it your full-time job, then you're going to get paid like it's your full-time job. If it's your side gig, then you're going to get side gig money.
Yeah, I mean, I think just a little insight. That's why people say Chinese sellers do better than Western sellers. 'Cause a lot of the Westerners, we do this as like a side hustle. We don't treat it like a full-time thing. We're like trying to
Right.
just make some extra cash, but like Chinese sellers is their business. So I don't want to separate those people, but anybody, if this is your business, this is a business decision. Um, I know this could be a whole topic in itself, but maybe we'll just do one quick one about Chinese New Year. I mean, sometimes overstocking in Christmas, maybe it's a blessing in disguise, because, Chinese New Year, I know we had, I'm a shareholder in a bigger Amazon company called Alpha Rock, and we had sometimes we overstocked, or we felt like we were overstocked, but then COVID happened, and then we were just so happy because we were overstocked, because we could, survive or stay in stock when there was delays on inbound shipments or the COVID issues. So, how do you normally see transitioning Q4 to Q1 and Chinese New Year? Like that.
Well, yeah, if you're trying to get into the game now, I would probably say it's a little too late to get
Yeah,
in
too
for
late.
any of the holidays. It's way too late to get into the holidays. Now, it's also interesting that you say the word overstock, right? But when I hear overstock, I think opportunity, because there are all these new marketplaces, right? And it's all about what you make of that. So where you might have too many products that won't sell on Amazon, well, hey, you have Walmart, you have eBay,
Yep.
You can go down to the mom and pop shops like you were talking about not too long ago, and you could try to sell those master cases. So I mean, it's really what you make of it. Again, if you treat it like a full-time job, you'll get paid like it's a full-time job. But historically, businesses do see a lot of excess sales in Q4, depending on how they market their product. Of course, it depends on how saturated that market is, how competitive their pricing is, what added values they have to it. But ultimately, it is what you make of it.
Yeah, and then one strategy I like to tell people, if you use a 3PL, is you could easily rebundle or upsell. You could throw in a freebie. You could, you're more nimble, because once you're in Amazon, you can't really take it. You could, of course, take it out. I've done it, but it's a nightmare and it's expensive.
Right.
But you could adjust your, especially in Q4, you could maybe give away some extra stuff. You could have a Christmas pack or a holiday pack. So there's more flexibility too when you're doing more just-in-time shipping into Amazon. And then, of course, you can also get these new marketplaces and do giveaways. And yeah, I mean, worst case, if you are, like I said, overstocked, you could just try new channels, or you could try, even liquidating could be just a marketing strategy, in a way. Of course, sounds scary, but you could also do that to boost your other markets. So yeah, this has been really, really, thanks for sharing. We haven't even really gotten to dig into what you and your company do. So I would love to, I'd love to hear more about Novaland and what you guys have been up to.
Yeah, so Nebulae's a full end-to-end sourcing, purchasing, and logistics solution. We handle everywhere from initial requests for quotes, finding the right factories for our users, of course, managing samples and consolidating them, shipping them to the end users, placing orders, handling localized contracts. As international contracts could be a nightmare. So we do have offices in China that handle all of that, but as well as production oversight, quality control inspection reports, shipping to wherever it may be, 3PL or Amazon, or we've shipped to apartments before where new sellers just want to get it. They want to see their baby. It's completely understandable. But yeah, I mean, after that, we also handle the, obviously we have 3PLs. We have 3PLs all along the East Coast as well as in LA. So we really try to simplify and make the supply chain safer in a very antiquated, industry where things have improved so in a minuscule way, where it's small improvements like marketplaces like Alibaba, which I say minuscule, it's humongous, but it's a minuscule way to solve a supply chain problem, right? It's a very open, pay to play, anyone could get on, who knows who's on the other side of the screen sort of thing. So it presents all these risks. And so we try to mitigate those. And that's for new sellers, established sellers, retail chains, you name construction companies. And so that entire supply chain management really helps businesses and people really focus on their business instead of working in it, which can be a challenge, especially when you're trying to scale.
Awesome. Well, thanks for these insights. And it's what's some ways to find. I think we will link it up on the show notes. I think you guys are on all the channels, but novaland.com is probably the best place. Or
Yeah, definitely Nebulae.com. You can check us out on Facebook. We're going to be putting out a bunch of Chinese New Year content, particularly as it's coming up, and Instagram, we're pretty active there. Shoot us a DM, ask us questions, whatever the case may be.
Okay, Francois, thank you so much for sharing with us. And yeah, let's wish them all this, everybody, good luck. And I think it's gonna be a good year for anybody on doing anything online, right? And let's rock. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and also check out our Instagram at Global from Asia. Thanks again, and see you soon.
E-commerce like over 8 years.